Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're a student who's constantly grinding, trying to become the absolute best version of yourself, but you find yourself just completely struggling to actually stay consistent with your goals, well, you're in the perfect place. Today, we're going to completely deconstruct, analyze, and ultimately bust the single biggest self-development myth out there, and we're going to replace it with some hard, data-driven reality so you can finally build study routines and daily habits that actually stick.
Because, let's be honest, we have absolutely all been there. You're staring down that ultimate student trap. You know the one. It's super late at night, you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and out of nowhere, you get hit with this massive, overwhelming burst of motivation. You think to yourself, is tomorrow the day I finally change? You promise yourself that tomorrow you're going to wake up at the crack of dawn, eat this perfectly balanced, healthy breakfast, go for a morning jog, and just completely reinvent yourself. You want to instantly ditch the habits holding you back and just instantly download the good ones. But, yeah. As we all know way too well, when that alarm actually goes off the next morning, doing all those things is a completely different story. Change is tough, right?
So that begs the question, how long does real change actually take? Well, if you ask around, most people will confidently tell you it takes exactly 21 days to form a new habit. It's treated like gospel. In a really fascinating TEDx talk, speaker Nawal Hadaki shared this personal story from high school that just perfectly captures this. She remembered a teacher confidently giving her this exact 21-day timeline, and hearing that, it was a light bulb moment for her. She saw her golden opportunity and decided right then and there she was going to become a bed maker. No more yelling for her mom to make her bed. She was going to totally conquer this habit, and she just had to stick it out for 3 weeks. And man, she was determined. Day by day, she dragged herself up at 6 a.m. and she made that bed. Even on days she was practically running out the door late for school, she forced herself to do it. And you know what? She absolutely hated every single second of it. But she pushed through. She hit that mythical 21-day finish line. And then came day 22. It was her breaking point. She opened her eyes and literally the very first thing she did was yell, "Mom, please don't forget to make my bed today." She quit on the spot. She honestly just assumed she was worse at life than everybody else. But the reality? She had fallen victim to a massive, global misunderstanding.
Section 1. The 21-Day Habit Myth. Where did this famous rule actually come from?
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the origin of this myth brings us to a guy named Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Now, Dr. Maltz was not a psychologist. He definitely wasn't studying the study habits of stressed-out college students. He was a plastic surgeon working way back in the 1950s. And during his practice, he started noticing this really strange pattern with his patients. When he'd perform, say, a nose job, he noticed it took the patient exactly 21 days to get used to seeing their new face in the mirror. Or similarly, if a patient had an arm or a leg amputated, they'd experience phantom limb sensations for, you guessed it, exactly 21 days before they finally adjusted to their new physical reality. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where everything went off the rails. Because think about it. On one hand, you have adjusting to a major surgical procedure. That is a passive, psychological adjustment to a physical change that has already happened to you. But on the other hand, we have active, daily, behavioral choices. Things like a student consciously trying to wake up early, forcing themselves to sit down and study, or taking the time to cook healthy meals. It is completely absurd to apply a 1950s surgical recovery timeline to modern active self-development. I mean, they are fundamentally different psychological processes.
But the damage was done. Dr. Maltz went ahead and published his observations in a book, and it absolutely exploded. We're talking over 30 million copies sold. That massive, massive reach is what effectively mainstreamed this whole idea. It totally morphed from this niche clinical observation about surgical patients into this hard and fast, undisputed rule for literally anyone trying to change their life.
So why did we all just blindly fall for it? Well, it's because the 21-day rule hits the absolute perfect sweet spot of human temptation. First off, it's a wonderfully short amount of time. It feels incredibly doable to a student who's already stressed out. At the same time, 3 weeks is just long enough to sound, scientifically believable. It feels like a challenge, for sure, but definitely not an impossible one. I mean, who wouldn't want to completely transform their life, become an early bird, eat perfectly, and ace all their classes in less than a single month? We would all sign up for that in a heartbeat.
Which brings us to the ultimate reality check. The whole premise is super exciting, but when we actually sit down and look at how human beings learn new skills and rewire their brains, can we really fundamentally change who we are in just 21 days? Does this actually hold any water when we talk about breaking toxic routines and building productive ones? Well, to answer that, we have to look at what really dictates habit speed. And the biggest factor? It's goal complexity. If your goal is just to start eating a piece of fruit every day,
Okay, that's a pretty simple habit. It's not going to take a ton of mental rewiring to eat an apple. But if your goal is to acquire a really complex skill, like a killer tennis serve, or if you're a student training yourself to sit down and do 3 solid hours of deep focused work with 0 distractions, that takes significantly more time. The other massive factor is consistency. Repeating a behavior for 3 minutes a day is going to give you wildly different results than dedicating 30 minutes a day to it.
So, if the 21-day rule is completely out the window, what does the actual rigorous science say? To clear this all up, we turn to a famous piece of psychological research by Philippe Lally titled How Our Habits Formed. And this time, it wasn't based on passive surgery patients. This study actively tracked 96 people over a solid 12 weeks. Every single person chose a brand new habit to work on. Somewhat with simpler tasks, like just drinking 3 cups of water before lunch. Others took on much more demanding tasks, like running for 15 minutes after dinner every single night.
And after those 12 weeks, the data revealed a new, highly crucial number: 66. On average, it takes exactly 66 days to move from an old behavior to subconsciously, automatically carrying out a new habit. Not 21 days, 66 days. But honestly, even that average doesn't tell the whole story, because the speed of habit formation varies wildly depending on the person and the task. For some folks doing really simple things, it was remarkably fast, like as quick as 18 days. But for others who are tackling complex habits and juggling complicated life circumstances, it took up to 254 days. Think about that for a second. That is over 8 months. And this right here is exactly why you need to stop feeling guilty. If you tried to build a strict study schedule, forced yourself to do it for 21 days, and then totally crashed on day 22, that wasn't a personal flaw. You're not broken. You just hadn't given your brain anywhere near the actual biological time it requires, which can literally be anywhere from 2 to 8 months.
Section 2. A Guide to Consistency, Translating Data into Student Success.
So, let's move to the practical stuff. Here is the actual, science-backed playbook for maintaining a new habit once you start. First, you've got to make it a formalized part of your schedule. Do not just leave it up to whenever you're in the mood, because spoiler alert, you won't be. Second, set physical and digital reminders to keep yourself on track. Third, build a supportive environment. If you're trying to study, physically remove the phone from your room. But please, pay close attention to step 4, because it's vital. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Science explicitly shows that messing up once or twice has absolutely 0 lasting negative effect on your long-term behavioral change. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be persistent.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it completely flips that tomorrow I'll change everything 2 a.m. mentality on its head. Real lasting change requires you to give yourself grace and give yourself time. You have to commit to the system and just embrace the daily grind of the process. Seriously, stop rushing yourself to become a completely different person overnight. Focus on making tiny, manageable improvements. If you miss a day, it is not the end of the world. Just get back on the horse the next day. The immense crushing pressure of a 21-day deadline is gone. You literally have months to let this naturally take root in your life.
So, let's wrap this up. Change is rarely easy, and it is almost never as simple as a catchy little 3-week timeline makes it sound. But with enough patience and the right system, literally any habit can be reshaped. Knowing that you have the freedom to take your time, to make mistakes, and to build a routine that actually works for you over the next 66 days, what's going to be your first step? I'll leave you with this to think about. What is one small habit you are going to start working on today? Make a choice, start today, and I promise you'll get there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.